Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Live podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
And special guests today, we have Mickey and Morgan Lang in the studio.
Woo.
Hi, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
So
awesome. Good. Well, we'll get to you guys in just a second. But first, as always, if you haven't done so already, please take a minute. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this. And take a minute, share it with a friend. Let somebody else who hasn't heard this yet, send it to them. As always, if you want to be a part of our conversation, you can also email podcast@dfchurch.com, and you will be featured on our listener mail segment later. But as I said, we've got a lot to cover today, so we're going to just briefly do some news things, and then we'll jump into our special guests in the studio. The biggest news story right now, and I'm sure you guys have seen a lot about this, is going to be what's going on in Israel, because right now, obviously, if you haven't heard what happened, Israel was attacked. Hamas launched a very large attack, mostly against civilian targets, which has now drawn Israel back into counterattack. The whole situation is devolving into outright war. It's a really messy situation, obviously, and it's one, whenever we start talking Israel, there's, I think, a lot of opinions, a lot of questions, a lot of people on multiple sides of it trying to say, what do I make of all this?
And a lot of misinformation.
A lot of misinformation that I've seen. So, for instance, the true thing that happened, and we were talking about this before we started recording, the true thing that happened was Hamas had sent in people like paragliding soldiers in towards this music festival, and they opened fire. They killed a bunch of festival music goers. That part really happened. However, video of it has been floating around that's not actually from that. It's a totally different thing with these paraglider people coming in. And so it's like even the real information has now been mixed in with a lot of misinformation.
Right. How do you know what to believe? What's actually true?
Right. And so, like I said, that could be a whole podcast to itself. And in fact, it's going to be. We're going to do a special episode of this podcast with our friend Rabbi Jack Zimmerman, who does the Seder here every single year. We are going to be having him on in this next week to do a special podcast. Awesome. So we're not going to really go into a lot of that right now, but if you want to hear what our good friend Rabbi Jack has to say about the situation. But in the meantime, if you're like, well, what do I need to do about it? What can I do right now? Obviously, first and foremost is pray. Definitely be praying for everything in there. Pray for a lot of just the civilians on every side. Civilians are the ones who are like taking the brunt of a lot of this, unfortunately. And so just pray for hopeful peace to come eventually. Obviously, we know Jesus will come and bring peace. But
the psalmist who said, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We should join in that prayer right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I'm going to warn you guys, if you're listening, watching, whatever, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, so I might cough a couple times.
Gross.
I'll try to do it off camera. I'm going to do it off mic. Not like what happened on Sunday when I was preaching and I coughed directly into my microphone and just woke everybody up. It sounded like a bomb going off. Like it was into the sanctuary. It was very intense.
I thought the rapture was happening. I was like, yes, come on, Jesus, take me home.
I think it's the sound of a trumpet, not the sound of a drum.
Oh, man, you're right.
All right, but let's jump into our main topic today. Now, our main topic is we're going to be talking about kids ministry. And so I thought, who better to talk about that than with our children's director, Mickey Lang?
Some kids themselves.
And
pretty much. It's very true.
And his wife, who is super involved in our kids ministry as well. It's really awesome actually watching both of you guys getting to work together and kind of put all this stuff into place and seeing everything that has come through. One of the things you might not know, if you're a member or a tender here at Discovery, our kids' curriculum is entirely being written by you, Mickey, and I'm sure you're helping as well a lot, Morgan.
It's like a 60-40 with Morgan being 60.
That's just because preschoolers need 60% more work than everyone else.
That's fair.
At least.
That makes sense. And so we've done episodes in the past where Matt and I talked about like the future of next gen ministry and like high school and middle school and the changing ways that we do ministry in those age groups. And I thought it would be a really good idea to have the same conversation with you guys about, what does kid ministry look like now in 2023? Because I think there's a lot of, and this is just in church, we run into this in middle school and high school where it's like, I remember how I did Sunday school as a kid. And so that must be how it always needs to be, as opposed to like thinking through what might need to change and what needs to look different as our culture and as our time and as our needs change. So let's just start. I'll ask you a question. What do you guys think the biggest challenges facing kids ministry in churches today might be?
I think that, well, there are a few really big challenges. The first one that comes to mind is just like, how do you do it? Parents are just trying to figure out how it goes themselves. And so when you're here for an hour a week or 2 hours a week, depending on your program, it's like, well, now I get to kind of parent their kids too. And then we might have a different style of parenting, different expectations. Then, of course, there's always getting people involved, making sure that they have a heart for kids, making sure that they understand the Bible themselves before they go and teach it. Yeah, those are a couple of the big ones.
Sure.
I think it's interesting you said parent, and that was honestly the first word that came to my mind when Nathan said, what is the biggest challenge facing children's ministries? It's parents,
parents.
right? Because the kids, they only go where their parents are going to take them. And I haven't talked with any kids after Sunday school who have been like, man, that was the lamest thing I've ever done in my life. Like the kids love it when they're here, right? So it's up to the parents to bring them here. And I feel like in like this post-pandemic world that we live in, and we see this all over church, and we've talked about this, Nathan, it's not, just one age group of ministries, churches all over the world. There's this convenience that comes with, I can just do stuff at home today. And so we have like this inconsistency from our kids, and we see that in our children's programs, right, guys, where 1 week we'll have 4 kids and the next week we'll have 12 kids. And it's like, but where were you guys last week? So you can never build like that momentum and that like camaraderie amongst the kids where they're building deep friendships with each other while they're learning about God together. And so that for me, and even as a parent, like that's something I try and fight against is I want my kids at church every single week because it matters. But I don't think all of our parents agree.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely grew up in a home where we moved around a lot through my elementary years. And so like my base friendships were from church. And so that's where I drew my community.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 questions that came to mind as you guys are both kind of talking through a lot of that. The first one is, I think I keep referencing back to like our high school, middle school talk because it was relevant as well. But I think this extends throughout next gen ministry in general. I feel like oftentimes kids ministry or anything in next gen can be like a scapegoat for people. Have you guys experienced that where it's like, there's a lot of times when people are going to leave a church and they're like, well, it's because of the kids program, whatever. Even if it wasn't, like, that's just a convenient excuse. How do you guys, have you experienced that? And how do you deal with that almost like added pressure of like, people are going to look to this and use this as their reasoning, even if that's not really the reason? And it's like one more little thought I had before I'll toss it over to you. Because I've heard this with youth group where we'll be like, kids will be like, our parents will be like, we're leaving because we don't like the youth group. And we talk to the kids and they're like, we love the youth group. Like, we don't have any issues with anything that's happening in the youth group. However, our parents are just, they want to go for X, Y, and Z reasons, or they're upset about this or whatever. And so it's like a convenient excuse to put it on to some of these other ministries. Is that something you guys have dealt with?
I mean, a little bit. Early on in my time here, we had conversations about curriculum and how that was being either properly chosen or improperly chosen. So we took the time to sit back and really take a look at what we were teaching and what our goal was for the ministry. And I talked with Matt for a good long while, for weeks, and then we eventually made a shift in curriculum and eventually made a shift again to where we're writing our own curriculum to make sure that we're trying to actually hit our goals.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can take it, I think, one of 2 ways. You can either take it personally and come to the conclusion that you're a failure and that, oh, well, maybe kids ministry is something that we need to get rid of. Or you can take it as a reality check to really think about, well, maybe I do need to cut out some things. Maybe I do need to start teaching different areas of the Bible even. A lot of people know the story of Moses in the basket and Jonah and the whale, but they don't know like the second half of those stories where you see the real failure of humanity and the grace of God that comes through it.
Is there an element of a lack of biblical literacy in our kids that you've seen in the last couple of years, which is maybe why we've done some shifts in curriculum? And with that, is it because of children's ministries or is it because of home?
That's a leading question.
I know it is. And I'm asking as a parent, right? Who I want my kids to know and love Jesus. And they do that by knowing and loving his word. That's one of the greatest ways to get to know him. And so I want them to know the Bible. And then especially as they start to get older, when they get into middle school and high school, friends are asking them questions and saying, well, you're an idiot for believing this type of stuff. How can you possibly have a brain and believe it? I want them to know God's word and know that it is truth. How much of that falls on you guys as children's directors versus us as parents? And I know that is a leading question, but I want, maybe you can use it as an opportunity to encourage parents with it. Because I think I know your answer. Maybe not.
If you expect for your kid to learn the Bible for 1 hour a week, or, over the course of their life, you expect them to learn the Bible 1 hour a week at a time, it's not going to stick. It's just not enough. That'd be like saying that I'm going to talk to my kid about respect once a week and hope that they're going to get it.
Right.
It's not a thing. You can't do that. And I think in the past, we've been a really consumeristic society in the way that we look at church, because we can offload just about everything with our kids. They go to sports, they have a coach who gives them input, and that's that. We have the teachers who give them the academic input. And now we have church, so we can go and they can get their spiritual input there. But maybe that works okay for sports. But if you want them to become lifelong lovers of Jesus and followers of Jesus, it takes more than that. It takes intentionality. It's reading the Bible. We went to a children's pastors conference in January, and one of the things that was said was the biggest influence that your kid has in becoming a lifelong follower of Jesus is reading the Bible daily. It's not going to church, which is great. Please do bring your kids to church. But that's not the only thing. We're here to supplement what people are doing at home. We're here to come alongside parents. I'm always down for saying, if you want a good activity for your preschooler to engage with a Bible story in a different, sensory way or play-based way, I love to do that. And that's what I'm here for. But you're the primary spiritual leader as the parent.
Yeah.
So.
I've often said in youth ministry, I can't out teach what you do at home as a parent. So my job is to supplement what you're doing at home. And if you have nothing going on at home, then great. That's a different conversation I'm going to have. So how would you, and maybe you got some tools and resources and ideas at the conference, but how can I as a parent encourage my kids to read the Bible every day without them feeling like it's a chore and it's forced, right? Because I don't want them to look at it as, oh, God, I have to read my Bible. Instead, man, I'm connecting with my Savior. How can I encourage my kids that way?
I think one of the biggest ways is to model it.
Okay.
I mean, because we as adults, we have trouble doing it consistently too. I actually look at my father-in-law, and he's up every morning, 5:30, taking his time, and he makes it a priority. My son likes to get up at 5:45, and he'll go up and sit next to his grandpa, and his grandpa's like, nope, this is my Bible time. You can sit quietly, and then I'll engage with you. But then we get Adrian, who will be like, oh, I want to do my dino devotions, which incorporates dinosaurs in the Bible, and he'll sit up there and do it beside him. And he goes through phases where he does it consistently and where he doesn't, but
Just like us.
Right.
yeah, he's human. And so, but yeah, he sees it modeled really well by his grandfather, especially. And so we've got these little humans who are looking up to the bigger humans and trying to figure out how to do life and how to really engage with God. And if they see us doing it, then they're going to be curious about it. And they're going to naturally, I think, be inclined to at least explore it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I like the idea of connecting are giving them resources that are along their interests. There's so many resources that you can find today, like the Dino Devotions. There's superhero stuff. There's science stuff. I mean, there's so many different options.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking too, like we've got 3 preschoolers, so they're not literate yet, and so it's like, how do you encourage a love of scripture, but not a love of scripture just in its literary form, but like because you love the creator.
Right.
A lot of it, like you said, is modeling. Awana is a really helpful program to build that beginning foundation in loving God and loving his word. I wouldn't sit down with my preschoolers. I'm just being honest. I wouldn't sit down with my preschoolers and memorize verses with them if it weren't for Awana. Maybe other parents would.
Yeah.
And if you do, come out of the woodwork and introduce yourself to me and help me. But having a something to do, even if it's once a week, and then we listen to the songs in the car. It's been such a huge difference. Also, I think one thing too is like praying with your kids on the way to school. Like if you're not starting your day talking to God with them, I don't know. I guess I've only recently started doing that with all of the pickups and drop-offs we've been doing this year. Now with our kids being in some form of school.
And it helps like set the day too, set the tone for the day. As I know, getting our 2 older ones to school, like my stress level just skyrockets because we've got 30 minutes and then we've suddenly got 1.5 minutes to get out the door. And I'm like, why haven't you done what you're supposed to?
I told you to get your shoes on 20 minutes ago.
And so just resetting me like, okay, before you get out of the car, let's go before God. Let's talk to God. Let's reset, refocus. And it's just really helpful to show them that you understand that there's something greater than your timeline.
Yeah.
And that greater thing is God, and you can get to know him through his word.
I like that.
So I think one of the other interesting things that we've seen maybe shift in the past, I don't know, decades even, I feel like if you go way back in like history of church, there wasn't even like kids ministry as a thing, right? Like everybody just went to the church service, you all just sat together and that was all. Then we started moving into a kind of a thing where it's like, well, let's break out into like Sunday schools and like kid specific programming and like finding these opportunities to give kids their own space a little bit. And like you said, maybe apply it a little bit more in a way that they're going to get. But I think we're almost kind of, everything kind of just like goes back and forth, it feels like. And so I feel like we're almost starting to come out of that even a little bit of saying like, we've gone too far. We've separated too much. And so now it's like, it's not our church, like all of us together. It's like, here's the grown-up church and here's the kids church and here's the teenagers church. And it's not this multi-generational community that it was intended to be. And I know like specifically here at Discovery, we've started kind of pulling back a little bit. Like, we have the kids in there for the time of musical worship every week now. And, depending on age level, that can be very tricky. But it's this idea of like, the church is all of us. Like the kids aren't just like dropped off for babysitting while the grownups get to go do church and finding. So how do you guys see that changing? Or do you see the value as we try to like reintegrate, for lack of a better word, some of the generations?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's frustrating and irritating. It really rubs me the wrong way when you have like a child who's interrupting the service, and that's not the frustrating part. It's the part where you see the people just turn and they're like, oh, how dare they bring their child in here?
Right.
How dare they parent while we're trying to have knowledge puff us up.
Right. Right. Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
I have this vision of giving messages or sermons, whether it's me or another pastor, where their kids just kind of jabbering on and the parents don't have to worry about being shamed because the kids are being kids and they're going to glean what they're going to glean from the message. And maybe parents don't get to take all the notes that they wanted to. They missed points 2 and 3 from the sermon.
Right.
But at the same time, they know that this is a safe place for them to learn about God.
Love that.
And I think like we're here at Discovery, we're trying to make that shift of intergenerational worship and ministry, where we have included the kids. And yeah, sometimes they're a little wily. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we had one toddler run up on stage during
We
the
did.
music.
And you know
Nice.
what?
Awesome.
It was awesome though. Like, here's the thing. At a certain point, you know, we can look at like worship needs to be orderly, and there's certain things that Paul gives us. And if we ever venture to a spot where it's going to pull people away from God, obviously we need to pull back on that. But that's not what happened, right? This kid got up and he was just dancing. He was just grooving, and he was kind of on beat, and he looked like he was enjoying the music. And it's like, we can either like stop everything and say, hey, get this kid off the stage, and, you know, march him off the stage. But like, how does that, praise God, how does that help build people up?
How does that draw that kid closer to Jesus?
Right.
If we're like, no, you're not welcome here.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas instead it was like, you know, you're not like going over and pulling out chords from the audio system. So like, just, you're a cool kid. Don't worry
Right.
about it.
No harm, no foul type. I'm reminded
Right.
of like what Jesus said in Matthew 19, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them.
Right.
Right. Like, let them come. If the kids are going to be in the service and they might make a noise every now and then, or they're shuffling their papers around, and it's, let the little children come. Like you said, Mickey, they're going to hear something.
Right.
And they're going to see, going back to this idea of as the older generations, we need to model it. They're going to see us sitting and learning from God's word. And it might be awkward for them at times. It might not even be fun for them at times.
Right.
But that's fine, because we're giving them an opportunity to hear about Jesus and learn who he is and what his plan for their life is. And I'm all for that.
Yeah. On top of that, though, we typically think of us being the ones who are teaching the kids, but the kids, and this is speaking as a parent especially, they're teaching us about ourselves too. Like, here's your sin issue that you have to deal with. Do you idolize the way we do the church service?
Right.
Do you idolize the message that you may have prepared?
Or do you idolize the way other people look at you as you're parenting your kid in the service?
Right.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
good one.
I have the best behaved kid who just sits there with his hands folded in his laps the whole.
But yeah, this kid who's gonna disrupt your service, or these kids, or even adults sometimes, like, they're pointing out issues that you have in your own heart where, oh no, I need to do it this way. Maybe the Holy Spirit's saying, today's lesson is about patience.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
Today's lesson is about bearing with one another and what they've got.
Yeah. I think too, like, Adrian knows a lot about the Bible. He is, I mean, like, yeah, I'm very proud of him in that regard. He does not know how to worship. And it's taken many, many weeks of now, you know, before we were doing it, like, we were bringing the kids in once a month, right?
Right.
And that once a month was really hard for him.
Right.
If he didn't know the songs, if he, in general, he just didn't know how to worship. And it's getting so much better now that it's a regular part of his week.
I love that.
And one other thing, a shout out to Lex, is that she's saying what songs there are every week. And then Mickey's setting them out in his newsletter so that we can listen to it ahead of time and he can have some familiarity. So it kind of breaks down that, like, uncomfortable, I don't know this song, you know, but anyway, so I'm very grateful for this, because I want him to know how to worship God, how to love his word. And I want him to know what it looks like to be part of the capital C church.
Yeah,
I love
And so by doing this, I think he'll be more familiar when it comes time for him to be, you know, growing into adulthood.
Yeah, I think you don't want high schoolers graduating and being like, oh, why are we doing this?
Right.
This is what churches look like.
Or like Adrian, he has an extreme fascination with the confidence monitor in the back of the sanctuary, and he loves to read the words from that monitor. I mean, how
Great.
I mean, it wouldn't be awful to have a bunch of high schoolers be like, oh, what is that?
Right.
But at the same time, like, maybe get them familiar with what's going on in that room.
What I can say from like maybe quote unquote grown up perspective, it's been so awesome having kids in there, you know, all the way up through the high schoolers. Like, the energy level is so different.
Mm.
And it's like, maybe this is part of why, and we talk about this, like all the generations need each other.
Right.
And it's like the younger ones can sometimes provide us with that reminder of the passion and the energy and the love for God.
What a childlike faith looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, older people, we've got, maybe there's a little bit more learned wisdom or life experience or things like that we can help, counsel and mentor. But like putting it all together, the one thing that I wonder, and you kind of briefly touched on this, and I think we're going to probably split this into multiple parts because there's so much I want to talk about. And I know for the sake of time, we're not going to get to all of it today. But maybe the last big thing today to talk about would be, how do you balance this idea of that materialism, consumerist attitude, and at the same time adjusting things to what's going to work best for fitting with people, right? Because those are kind of opposite sides of where you want to be. Because on the one hand, it's not about what's going to be best for them, or not necessarily best for them. It's not about what they like or what they want or what they need. Anybody, not just kids, from a church service. And we don't want to just make this thing that's catering to you, what you want, right? Like church needs to become to a place where you say, what can I bring to this church and how can I serve? And it's not about my wants, my preferences, my desires. But at the same time, you want to make it relevant and applicable and like connect with kids, like if your sermon is going completely over their heads, if they're ever even in there, then of course they're not going to want to be in there. And so it's like, how do you draw that balance, do you think, between those two kind of extremes?
Is this in regard to kids being in the service or just in general?
I would say almost it's specifically with kids. And this can even apply to like Sunday school of like, how do we not foster a consumeristic, it's all about me attitude, but still cater to what's going to work best for them? That can work in kids, but that I think actually applies pretty much church wide. Yeah. Like, how do we balance? And I think that's maybe the big thing that we have to, as a church, kind of reconcile right now. How do we do that?
Yeah. I mean, well, as parents, if you're, saying, I'm not going to go to this church because I don't like the worship or because the kids ministry or the youth ministry or whatever, then your kids are going to have that same consumeristic mentality, right? What can I get from church? Not what can I give to the body of Christ?
Right.
So I don't know, I guess pray about it and check your own heart.
Yeah. What you have to decide as a parent, what is the purpose of worship? What's the purpose of going to church? And then thinking even bigger, the church has to think about, well, what is our purpose for being here?
Right.
And then just kind of like picking out specific areas is like the staff then has to be on board with what the church has decided that they're going to do. And then the volunteers under the staff have to understand the why of what the staff is doing,
right? Because
they're following what the church is doing. It's a systemic thing where you have to figure it out. Otherwise, you're just going to have this round robin congregation that comes in and leaves and comes in and leaves because it's not exactly what they want, because they don't know what the church is there for.
Right.
Yeah.
I can bounce from church to church and never find something that is perfect, right? And exactly what I want at all times.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, I think if I'm going into church with that mindset and I'm modeling that for my kids, I'm setting them up for failure.
Oh yeah. They're parrot sponges is what they are.
Yeah.
They absorb everything that you do and then they'll repeat it right back.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's funny. We've talked a lot about this intergenerational ministry, and, I guess this is why we're going to have to do a part 2, because then I ask the question, if intergenerational ministry matters so much, then why do we even have children's ministry?
Right.
Why do we even have youth ministry? Right. And so maybe that's something we can talk about next time.
Yeah. Let's save that for our part 2 as like the main kind of thrust of it, because I think that's a really great idea. And just for the sake of time today, I think that's where we'll kind of put a pin in it.
Okay.
We'll come back to it because I would love to have this conversation continue.
Yeah.
And maybe listeners, you can send in, why do you think children's ministry matters? Or does it? And we can kind of respond to some of those questions.
Yeah, please stop what you're doing right now. Pull the car over if you're driving. Jump out of the shower if you're taking one. Email podcast@dfchurch. Why do I keep going back to that example? Podcast@dfchurch.com. If you're, what else have I said? Working out. Put the weights
just working
down.
out. Swimming. I think you said
If you're
swimming. One
swimming,
time.
if you're eating, you can eat while you email. Those two can happen together. Maybe
Just
unless
don't
you have like
spill
a
your food on your laptop.
maybe you have like a no phones at the dinner table rule, and so you need to wait until after you're done eating.
Which, by the way, that's a
fine.
really good rule.
It
No,
depends.
no phones at the dinner table. It's a
Maybe.
great rule. Highly recommend it.
But whatever you do, email podcast@dfchurch.com. Now let's move on into our AI segment. As always, we're going to ask the AI a question, and you guys all get to live react to it. Now, you would think I would pick something Kidman related, and that would have made the most sense for the topic of this episode, but I did not. I didn't at all. It's okay. Because I decided to go a very different way with our AI this week. But just as a reminder, if you'd like to sponsor us on our AI segment, you can email podcast@dfchurch.com and we can get ChatGPT for just $20 and you get a month. We'll give you a shout out and you can pick the prompt. It's really fun if you want to sponsor that. But in honor of today's list, I brought in something special. And what I brought in, we're not sponsored by them. This is not an official paid promotion. They have not given us anything. I bought this with my own
But we'll
money.
take something.
Well, what is it? Because I'm not watching. I'm just listening today.
If you're just listening, I'm holding up a bottle
Okay.
of Y3000 limited edition Coca-Cola. This is Coca-Cola from the future, from the year 3000.
Oh,
and
that's
the
what
reason,
the Y means.
yeah,
Okay.
it's like Y2K.
Yeah.
Come on.
Y3000.
Now, the reason I brought this in is as I was looking at it on the shelf, they keep doing all these like Coca-Cola creations and they're all different weird flavors. This one specifically said co-created with AI. Now I've spent, I don't know,
What does
20
that
minutes
mean?
trying to figure out what that means. Like Googling, like searching on their website. What does that mean? Like, did they say design us the perfect flavor profile of Coke? I don't know what it means. I could not find an answer.
Have you tried this yet?
I have. I'm sorry.
Okay,
But you
okay.
guys have not. But my family, we got 2 bottles and they all really wanted to try it. And I said, I got to bring it on the podcast, but we can try the other one.
Sweet.
So we're going to try this. Matt, I'm going to hand this to you
Yeah.
to pour samples while I start the list to react to today. And so our list today for the AI is I said, give me like the top 10 biblical characters, what soda they would drink and why. What would be their favorite soda? And so I figured that fits well with my soda theme.
So real quick, the whole time you were talking and holding the bottle, you
Yeah.
were like moving it and shaking
Oh,
it the whole time.
no.
It almost just exploded all over the place. Thankfully, I closed it in time. But yeah.
That would have been great for the video viewers, not for the audio people as much. All right, so Matt, while you pour samples for us, we're going to start at number 10 with Jesus. Do you guys have any guesses on what soda he
Wine.
would?
Oh, it's a
It
soda.
has to be a
my
soda.
bad. My bad.
They, alcohol.
Cheer wine.
Yeah, cheer wine.
Is that a?
It's a southern thing.
So it's cherry
It's like-
soda,
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
full of red 40, hypes you up.
okay.
What more
They
could you ask
picked
for?
Coca-Cola.
Oh,
Standard Coke. As the Prince of Peace, he chooses the classic Coke to share with all his followers. I don't know how that follows, but I'm excited that it does. Number 9, Esther. Esther would drink.
Sprite.
You think Sprite? And guesses?
I have no idea. Starry,
Starry. I don't know if the AI knows what Starry is yet. I don't think we really know what Starry
Sierra
is yet.
Mist.
Awesome, thank you. So feel free to sip it and tell me what you think of the flavor. And I'll tell you this, Esther would drink Orange Crush. She boldly approached the king, so a fun, bright orange soda suits her. Does that make sense to you? Not to me.
AI, you're the weirdest. thing
AI,
ever.
sometimes you're so weird.
Or maybe
All right.
like grape soda because it's like the color of royalty.
There you
Oh,
go.
that
see,
makes more
that would have
sense
made
to
more
me.
sense. All right, number
This is
8.
just bad.
You don't like it?
No.
What do you
It's
think it tastes like?
it's Cotton
Flat,
candy.
first of all.
Cotton candy Coke.
Ugh.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like the awkward,
Like the
sweetness.
buttery-
Yeah,
It's
yeah. There's a little
creamy.
creamy to
It's
it.
almost like bubble gum. Strawberry,
Mm.
one of our producers in the room, Lex, has said. No?
I don't like normal Coke either. So
Oh. We had a debate about this on our DSM. This almost could fit into our drink or sink.
Yeah, I would sink it.
All right, number 8, Job. This one makes sense. Finally, we get one that makes sense, I think. What would Job want to drink?
This because it's terrible and he had a torture-filled life, and so
Dr. Pepper to go with his saltiness.
Oh, I like that. Any other guesses? Job. Canada Dry Ginger Ale. After all his trials, Job would need a soothing ginger ale. Think about it. When you're sick, what do? You drink ginger ale, right?
I guess that's true.
Ginger
water,
ales?
tea.
I don't know
No.
if that helps with boils though.
It does. You pour right on
You
it.
pour the ginger ale on the bowl.
All right, 7 is Peter. This makes no sense. AI, sometimes I wonder about you. Sunkissed. Okay.
Oh, I was gonna go wild cherry Pepsi.
He walked on water with Jesus. So fruit-flavored Sunkist seems fitting. Why?
Okay.
Wait, why does that seem fitting, AI?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. All
It's
right.
a good thing AI is not a real person because I would have a lot of questions for this person.
Well, I know, but it's going to be one day soon. So
that's
we
true.
better start figuring it out.
It's true.
Number 6, Mary Magdalene. Sprite. She was refreshed and renewed in her faith, just like Sprite is crisp and refreshing.
Aw.
Oh. Was
Okay.
she known for being crisp and refreshing?
In her faith.
In her faith?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 5, John the Baptist. Diet Right. That's a deep cut. Diet Right. That's like the off-brand Walmart soda,
Well,
right?
no, so Right is part of the RC Cola.
Oh, it still seems off-brand to me.
Yeah. Well, that's because it wasn't nearly as popular as Coke and Pepsi. Either way, impressive.
Yeah, he survived on locusts and honey in the wilderness, so he'd appreciate a diet soda.
What?
But
Because they're all gross?
why wouldn't he want something that had a little bit of a honey flavor, like a honey root beer?
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
yeah.
That's
It is
not
a
a,
thing.
that's not a known soda, Matthew.
That's fair.
Okay. Number 4, Samson. Mellow yellow. With his long hair giving him strength, he'd opt for smooth, mellow soda.
No.
That guy was anything but mellow, though.
He would want something like really strong.
Like Red Bull.
like
Is that soda?
Surge.
Can you call Red Bull?
That's
Surge.
Oh,
what he
Surge.
was
Yes.
on.
Surge is
100%.
so good.
Surge was really good. Surge was awesome.
That
I
was
used
childhood.
to, when I did like all-nighters with friends in high school, we would just buy like a 24-pack of Surge and just drink them all night long and just stack them up. And by the morning, we felt like garbage. It was so bad and so good.
Number 3 is Noah. Specifically,
LaCroix.
that doesn't count as soda.
Okay, my bad.
It's
soda
it's
water.
Bubbly.
It's a fizzy water, but I think soda has to have
Sugar?
some kind of a sweetener, whether artificial or sugar, some kind of a sweetener to be considered a soda.
He probably has had enough water, though. Let's be honest.
Ah.
He's going to be only soda.
Noah would drink Park's root beer. He loaded up the ark with pairs of animals, so a root beer with bite fits.
That was punny. Yeah.
At least that one kind of was a good joke. The AI, you're coming together. I think it was probably just confused. Like, on what basis can I assign soda to? They trained me on all the data of the internet, and this question makes no sense. I'm guessing is its thought process. If it had one. Number 2, David, Dr. Pepper.
Yes.
He was a man after
23
God's own
flavors.
heart, just like Dr. Pepper is a unique.
23 Psalm.
Just like Dr. Pepper is a unique soda after its own taste.
It's so good. Dr. Pepper is the
Is
only
that a-
soda that
is
I'm
that a-
actually willing to say like that I like crave sometimes.
Is that a slogan from Dr. Pepper though? A unique soda after its own taste.
No, but
I don't think
it
so.
is now.
Because I like that. That's a
Yeah.
good marketing for
Dr.
it.
Pepper, if you're listening, there's your new marketing.
Be like David. He was a man after God's own heart, and Dr. Pepper is a soda after its own taste.
Dr. Pepper is after my heart too.
And then number 1, Moses. What's Moses drinking, guys?
Moses is drinking, it's a soda.
And it's one we haven't mentioned yet, and it's a big one.
Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew.
Wow.
You
Mount
went
Sinai,
again.
right?
He was energized by climbing mountains and talking to God. The caffeine and dew would have come in handy.
I don't know if energized would be.
I mean, he was lit up like a light bulb.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
He came down pretty frustrated.
Well, so that's our AI list for the week. It's a little bit of a weird one today because, again, I think we have just gotten to a point of such a nonsensical prompt that AI is just baffled. It's
Which
like,
is why
I give
you
up
should
on humanity.
sponsor our AI segment so that you can give us the prompts so Nathan doesn't anymore.
Oh, I think that was a fun one.
At least
Well,
give him a break.
Let's
There
oh.
it is. Give him a break.
Let's turn our time over to our listener mail segment. Again, as always, email podcast@dfchurch.com, just like our good buddy Jeremiah did. He says, hot take and pot stirring. You guys ready for this?
Oh, boy.
And you know what's funny is he's in the room right now because he's helping produce our episode today. So those of you listening, you can know that he sent this email, but he's also in the room. So we're talking about it with him
Right in
here.
front of him.
I love it.
He says, I know that God said to Abraham, whoever blesses you, I will bless, and whoever curses you, I will curse. We often say that extends to Israel today, but does it? I know that they are God's chosen people, and God is not yet done with them. Revelation makes that clear. So the question comes, how much should we be focused on Israel and peace for land deals versus Ukraine versus the reported 27 other civil wars or insurgency around the world? So hot take real quick. What do you guys think? We're going to go into more detail on this on our
I was
actual
just gonna
Israel
say,
episode.
we'll get some really good conversation.
We'll have some
with
great
this.
conversation
Yeah.
with Rabbi Jack. But hot take, what do you guys think?
Well, the TNT verse, I think this week was about how God's not slow in fulfilling his promises. He's just patient with us.
Okay.
So well timed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, God's going to avenge Israel and it's going to happen, but it doesn't have to be in our timeline because we're not the boss.
Right. But it looks like increasingly it might be with the increased conflict over there.
It might be. I'm buckling up.
All right.
I think God's heart breaks at all examples of sin.
Yeah.
All the, whether it's the war in Ukraine or what's just happened in Israel, God's heart's going to break over people dying and not knowing him.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think that God's promises will still be fulfilled. I do think that there still is a bless and curse that will come. Though I also think that it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to support every single decision and action that modern day Israel takes. Because I think these promises aren't necessarily about modern day Israel per se. There's a remnant that remains, and we know that's going to remain, but that doesn't mean that modern day Israel is necessarily that.
Yeah, think of David too.
Right.
Like when he took Uriah's wife, he still had to deal with the consequences of his sin.
Right.
But he's still called a man after God's heart.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be it for our time today. Next week, as we mentioned earlier, we should be having our special episode on Israel with Rabbi Jack Zimmerman. So look forward to that. But again, I want to thank Mickey and Morgan Lang. We'll have you guys back on soon. I'll look at the schedule and we'll find a time to get you guys back.
Yes.
Matt, thanks for joining me as well today. And we will see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.